Good evening, viewers, and welcome to tonight's regional news. We begin with news from Haiti. Haiti is the only CARICOM country expected to benefit directly from a U.S. donation of 14 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to Latin America and the Caribbean. On Monday, the White House announced the final allocations for the doses President Joe Biden promised to donate last month. Some 60 million shots will go to the global COVAX vaccine sharing alliance and 20 million being directed to specific partners. It said through COVAX, the latest batch of doses will include about 14 million for Latin America and the Caribbean, approximately 16 million for Asia, and about 10 million for Africa. About 14 million doses will be shared directly with Colombia, Argentina, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, Panama, Afghanistan, and 22 other countries. We now turn our attention to Cuba. Cuba's Abdala coronavirus candidate vaccine showed efficacy of more than 92% after 3 doses, its maker said Monday, though it did not specify whether this was measured against infection, disease, or death. Cuba is working on 5 coronavirus vaccines and last month started immunizing its population using 2 of them yet to complete clinical trials. The World Health Organization has set a 50% efficacy threshold for coronavirus vaccines to offer protection against the virus or disease. The announcement came 2 days after authorities announced that Soberana 2, the other 3 doses shot being developed in Cuba, was 62% effective after the first 2 shots. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel welcomed the news as an achievement which, I quote, will multiply pride, end of quote, in the communist island nation. Cuba has been relatively untouched by the outbreak but has seen a recent sharp increase in cases, registering one of its worst days Monday with 1,561 confirmed infections in 24 hours. To date, it has recorded just over 169,000 cases and 1,170 deaths. Under American sanctions, Cuba has a long tradition of making its own vaccines, dating back to the 1980s. Nearly 80% of its vaccines are produced locally, and it hopes to come up with the first locally produced coronavirus shot in Latin America. We now turn our attention to Trinidad and Tobago. Caribbean Airlines on Tuesday announced its unaudited financial results for the first quarter of 2021, recording a loss of $25.7 million and a 75% drop in revenue compared to the same period in 2020. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic and the suspension of operations at its base in Trinidad and Tobago, the airline has seen passenger numbers slide and flight numbers drop to less than 10% of normal operations. The airline, which was kept afloat through a $100 million government guaranteed loan and cash injection by the government of Trinidad and Tobago, said that it is required to take further steps to ensure it has a sustainable business model for 2021 and beyond. These steps include major cost reductions in all areas of its operations, specifically in human resource complement, its fleet and other assets, and its route network. And finally, President Joe Biden's administration rejected Nicolas Maduro's call for relief from U.S. sanctions, saying the Venezuelan leader needs to do more towards restoring democracy before penalties would be lifted. Maduro, a target of crippling U.S. sanctions under former President Donald Trump, reached out to Biden in an exclusive Bloomberg interview last week, calling on him to lift sanctions, normalize relations, and end the demonization of Venezuela. Responding to Maduro's comments, a State Department spokesman said a U.S. policy shift would require major changes by the Venezuelan president. As long as, I quote, repression and corrupt practices, end of quote, by Maduro and his supporters continue, the U.S. will work with its partners and allies to keep up the pressure, including sanctions against those who undermine democracy, the spokesman said by email. The Trump administration barred Venezuela from U.S. financial markets in 2017. And that is all for your regional news. Thank you for joining.